Welcome to Devon and Cornwall Power BI User Group. Today's session is all about Visual Studio Code and how it can help us with our Power BI development. Over to you, Henrik.
So my name is Henrik Vestergaard, and I'm sitting here in Denmark, close to the city of Aarhus. I'm born in late 60s, and in Aarhus I work at the Aarhus University. We have a little more than 8,000 employees. We have a big IT department, but I'm sitting in the BI department under the finance department. Here we prepare the tabular cubes. We don't do much reporting. I do some, but we help the people in the organization to make the report, use the cube, and also to use it as efficiently as possible. On the side, I have my own company where I make 30-year budgets for the housing industry. It's a very small niche. According to the Danish legislation, you have to make a 30-year budget when you're going to change your windows, your doors, and your roof, and all kinds of that. And they have applications for that, but they are not easy to make analysis with, and they're slow, and they're not good at printing. So to a lot of companies, I deliver a light BI solution in Excel using Power Query, Power Pivot, and TC. So that's about me, and the agenda for today is these 6 parts. In the first part, I'll show about this new workflow that I've started and talk about the whys in the house. And in part 5, I'll make a demo. But in part 2, 3, and 4, I'll show a lot of really basic stuff about Visual Studio Code. And I'll get back to why I do that. And I'll talk a lot, show a lot. And if you think on the way that it's too much for you, overkill for your situation, I'll end up with 2 minutes showing a no-nonsense backup method that I have been using for 10 years up to this new workflow without losing anything. Yeah. So the new workflow, the whys. The thing that I want is to work with the lifecycle management in Power BI. So that is taking care of the life cycle of a report, a Power BI report. And why do I want that? I would like to have some backups, better backups, help people with making better backups, to retrieve all report versions, to identify differences between versions, enable collaboration, so enable multiple developers to work on the same report, and finally, easy report publishing. So instead of publishing as we normally do from Power BI Desktop, enable automatic publishing as a part of the backup process. So when you take a backup, you get it published to the workspace automatically. And finally, run automatic error and best practice test on both models and visual. So when you publish it, it'll test if you follow these best practices. I'm not much into that yet, but this is the potential. This is why I'm working with this new way of doing things. And if you look closer to this life cycle, see, it's quite simple today. We have Power BI Desktop. We develop our reports, push it into the service, and the red arrow goes both ways because it's also possible to make edits on the reports in the service and get it back into the desktop and continue your report development there. But the new optimal workflow that's lying ahead of us, according to Microsoft, is using PBIP files. That is, that you from Power BI Desktop save a report as a project file, and that means just a lot of smaller files. And Visual Studio can take over and handle these files together with Git and make local backups of these files, and it can push it into the online repositories. So the if I can get Visual Studio here, you'll get local backups, and on the online repository, you'll get the backups in the cloud. So that might be in Azure DevOps repositories or in GitHub repositories. That's both Microsoft. A lot of people get confused about what is Git and what is GitHub. Git is what makes it possible to make these backups or commits, as they call it. And I'll repeat it many times on the way. Commit, it is snapshot of all the files you have in a folder. For instance, all the files that is in a project file, a Power BI project folder. And GitHub is just the online storage of that, just like you could have it in Azure DevOps. And from the online repositories, that only works with Azure DevOps. You can get it pushed into the service. So you make your report in Power BI desktop, click save as a project file, and then with a few clicks, you have it integrated into the Power BI service. So that could be 5 reports at one time. Instead of you publishing them all and have to select the workspace, and like me, maybe select the wrong workspace, and forget you selected the wrong workspace, and the report will stay there forever. That will not happen here because you make these integrations. So when you save these five reports as project files and you hit the few buttons, it's automatically integrated into the service, published into the service. And again, the arrow goes both ways. You'll be able to make edits in the Power BI service. And from there, click a few buttons and it'll all be backed up in the online repository, and you can retrieve it back and work further on the reports in the Power BI desktop. But what does this, how do we get to that? Because that looks simple, but there's a lot of steps on the way. So you'll have to learn something about code files. You have to look at the Power BI report as code. And you have to learn Git, who's a beast. There's a lot of learning. There's online repositories. There's also a lot of learning. Here it becomes a bit more easy. But let me zoom a bit in on this. There'll be a lot of new terms. And we get closer. See the Power BI desktop we know, but we're going to work with Visual Studio Code. We're going to learn about extensions, Explorer, Terminal. I'll show you some of these concepts in a minute, and a lot of other stuff. We're going to learn about new extensions. New, anyway, if you haven't worked with it. I guess you are very different. Yes, some of you have never worked with anything else than the Power BI reports, and some of you have worked with code. But if you haven't seen that, you are going to learn new extensions like TMDL, PBIP, BIM, JSON, PBIR, etc. You'll get into the Git terminology of repository checkouts, resets, so forth. And online repositories, also new terms like DevOps repositories, GitHub repositories, initialize, clone, and so forth. And then it gets a bit easier, but there's something to learn here also. But how do you get the synchronization between the online repositories and the workspaces to run? Not that difficult. Problem is there's still many limitations. I'll get back to that in just a minute. And finally, you could also use activate deployment pipelines. I'll not show so much about this today, but the thing is that it'll when you publish from the online repositories into the workspace, you can set it up so it hits one workspace that you can name development, and then you can hit a button, deployment pipeline, and push all your artifacts in this workspace into another workspace that you might name test, and further on to production. So you'll end up with 3 workspaces where you maybe only had one before. But then you can leave the production as it is while you're developing new and maybe pushing that to test to have some test before you push it into production. Quite easy to use, and we have it for some while, but the problem was that there was no source control. So when you push something from dev to test, it's just overwritten. But the source control is what we are getting now. If I zoom out here, the positive things in this is when with all the new stuff to learn Git and Visual Studio Code. The positive thing is that we're data people who typically like to learn new languages. And the positive things with this stuff is that it's old stuff. It's something that other software developers have been using for years and years. So it's rock solid. It's just working. So that's a wonderful thing to study. If we start studying Fabric and all the new stuff, we know that it's not quite the same. So that's the positive side of it. But what I mentioned with the limitations is the mark with red here. So problem is that the project files and the TMDL, a new format that's more readable, it's preview features. So it's not ready for me to put in production. So I'm trying to help the report builders get starting with this because they really want that to have better source control, have possibilities to check out all versions. But this is preview features. You can't put that into productions. And then there's a lot of issues also. For instance, if you have live connections, report live connected to on-prem SaaS that we have a lot of, that's not supported yet. The integration from the workspace back to the repository. If you run that, TMDL is not supported anyway. If it's the first thing you do, publish from a workspace and into the repository, empty repository, then it's not supported. And there's some other limitation. And also the one down in the left, Fabric licenses. It's not a problem. We have it at the university, but if you don't have it, it's a requirement to make this repository to workspace integration run, and it's also a requirement for the deployment pipelines. So that's the reason that all the things with the red, that's something I'm testing, and that's the potential driving me to learn this. But what I want to set into production is this more simple. This is kind of call it the current workflow to get started with Git backing up PBIT files instead of the project files. So here you don't get all the benefits. You'll save a PBIT file, and that's a binary file. That's not something that Visual Studio can look at as code, but it can still handle it and get it into Git, get the local backups and the online backups. And you are able to go back to previous versions. So the thing is now, I've thought a lot about what would be the best thing for me to show that someone could get something out of that they can't get elsewhere. And I think for me, this tool that you run into here at the beginning, Visual Studio Code, if you don't know that, I have just experienced that there's so many very basic, simple things who took me way too long to discover. So that's even though I've seen a lot of videos and tutorials and intros. So that's what I would like to show you. And if you are from a coding background, you might think it's too simple, but maybe you can take something away of get some ideas of how would you present this to non-coding people if you were to get them into using this for the first time. So I'll spend a lot of time on some very basic stuff in Visual Studio Code. So for the rest of the session, I'll keep an agenda on the right side here. You can see here's my second part and my third part and my fourth part, and then I'll change the color of the points here as I go along. I'll try to follow it strictly. So then it's also easy for you to, if you want to revisit something of it in this recording, just to wind back to where I have changed the color here. You can see where is the stuff that I'm talking about that you're interested in. So VS Code, a little bit about the setup. Installation is only a bit, I'll tell you. Full screen here. So you have to download it and you have to install VS Code. It's a free program. And when I mention links and blogs and references to courses and so forth, I put some links in a link session that Sue will supply. Also this download page. So from here, you will download the Visual Studio Code and just click next, 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 next. There's just one thing I think you really should do, and that's to tick this off, add open with code action to Windows Explorer, because that's not default. And if you don't put that default, it's very difficult to get it doing this part in the registration editor. So if you forget it, uninstall VS Code, install it again, put this tick, because what it does is that when you right-click a folder area, you get this option to open with VS Code, and that's very, very handy. You also have to download and install Git to make these local snapshots of your folders, and you hit Windows and you just click next, next, next. There's a lot of setting options there. I haven't used anything but the default yet. So about the concrete things you can set up in the Visual Studio interface, I made this little slide here. So this area here is called the editor. Here's where you'll read your see your files. So here's a very small file. The only thing says purpose and show developer solution. That's just a text file or markdown file, actually. Down here, you have a status bar, and that's not only showing information, it's actually clickable, a lot of this. So that's also something to get used to, that you can click here to do a lot of stuff. I'll get back to it in a minute. One thing you can notice here is that it's a markdown file. It's a file with the extension .md, and it's a markdown file. So down here, you can change which, so sometimes the editor picks up what kind of extension you're working with, and it can show the right syntax coloring and so forth. But if it's picking the wrong one, you can click on the language here and select another language. So a lot of stuff in the status bar is clickable. On the right side, you have the activity bar. Here's where you select different items in the menu. And I think the most confusing part of the setup is this sidebar. And that's something I'll talk more of in details in a minute. But one thing I'll show you here is, you can see here is that, you can't see it, but inside the Explore item here, it says it at the top. And what you're looking at is one folder. So it's a folder called IMDb PBIP. And inside you can see subfolders and files. So that's one way you can see some files in one folder. And on top here, it confused me for a while. You can see open editors. And what you're seeing is, you can see, for instance, here is it says README. It's the open files. So up here, you can open several files. And as you open it, this section will pop up. And you can see the open, and that's very handy because you can close them here, you can rearrange them, and you can read them. You know, if you have a lot, it's not possible to read them. It's easier to read. So this is very useful, but very confusing, I thought, in the beginning. So that's the open editors. So let me jump into Visual Studio now to show you something about the sidebar. So here we have Visual Studio Code. Not to be confused with Visual Studio. This is Visual Studio Code, the free one. So, as I said, this one is the activity bar. This section here, and this one, and beside it you have the sidebar. If you right-click in this activity bar, you can move the primary sidebar left or right. And when you open VS Code, it'll be on the left side. And I find that when you get a lot of code here, and then you can get a lot of distractions at the same time over here, if you keep it on the left side. So the first thing I do is right-click and move it to the right side. So that's about it for the setup. No, I have one more thing to set up. This is the activity bar. It's possible to drag and drop these around and sort them. And when you start, I'll tell you about extension in a bit. When you start installing extensions, it'll drop a lot of icons out here, a lot of items out here, and gets even more confusing. So it's nice to know that it's very easy to rearrange them. You can right-click and you can hide them, just like before. So now I'm hiding it again. So just keeping that open, that I've used the most of the time. And the most of the time I use Explore, I use source control, and I use extensions. And this search here, it's for searching content inside files. It's not for searching for files. I'll get back to that in a moment. But these four are the ones that I use the most. Maybe also GitHub Copilot, but that's another story. I don't want to go into that today. Let me look at the time here. That's it. A very important thing to know about Visual Studio Code is extensions. When you install Visual Studio Code, it comes with a lot of features, but then I think there's thousands of extensions. So there's not many people in the world who works with TMDL files and PBIP files and Power BI files, for that sake, compared to all the other software developers. So that's why you are able to install extensions to just your needs. So it just gets you just have to find the right ones. And the important ones I have listed in the link session, these 6 recommendations. So let me show them quickly. I actually think the most important one is this one called Open. It looks like this. the extension, I'll show you a bit how you get it inside into Visual Studio Code. And what it does is something that's not out of the box. So if you click the Explore icon here, and then right-click a file, any file. Here is it's the PBIR file. So actually, you have a folder here where I have saved a Power BI as a project file, and in there you have a file. If you open that, you can open all the project files as a normal Power BI file. So I right-click on that and select Open with Default Application, and then it opens the normal Power BI file down here. This Open with Default Application, that's not, if you look at install VS Code, it's not there. It's not there before you install this Open. So let me show you how you do that. You go into the extensions, and up here you search. As you can see here, it says search extension in the marketplace. So you don't have to go in the website on the online marketplace. VS Code has it integrated. So if you search here for Open, it'll find it, and you can see it's here. And down, I have another extension called Open. That's not installed. So if you want to install it, you just click this install button. You can also click on the extension and read a bit about it, and then you just hit install, and then you're good to go. Easy peasy. So I won't show the other ones, but just to quickly mention why I think they are nice. The next three here is about syntax. You can install a extension called Power Query M language, and then you'll have nice Power Query syntax. It's also able to both color syntax and also able to format it. And down in the right side here, you can see that it's showing that it is the Power Query formula language that's identified here, so it can syntax color it and format it. Same thing with CSV. Wonderful little extension, Rainbow CSV. So I have a big CSV file here. I have blurred it because there's some confidential information, but a very nice way to have a visual look at your code. For instance, here you can see there's the second column is shown with blue. And if I look down here, I can see, oh, in those rows here, there's no data in that. So maybe you can use that for something. I like that extension. But there's also a TMDL extension. If you get that down, if you don't get that down, all the TMDL will just show up as white. But you're going to get it, and then you can see here that it's identified as tabular model definition language code. And then you have when you get to Git, and I really urge you to take a course in Git. I have linked to I have this mantra: if you want to be good at something, don't do blogs or articles, and read a book, read something about the basic, and then you can read articles. That's many times I have thought I don't have the time for the book, and then I have wasted a lot of times on articles before I read that book. So if you want to be good at something, start with a fundamental book. And I have followed one course. I think it's good. I recommend it there. There might be a lot of others also. But if you have Git, you ought to have two extensions here. Very quick. One called Git Lens. It's when you get into the source control, it's giving you a lot of new possibility. And the one called Git Graph, it's giving you a free graphical commit view. That is, you can see graphical here every time you took a snapshot of your folder and saved it into Git. So these are my recommendations. I'll go on to talk about folders. I said something about folders. One thing that's really helped me a lot when I got to think, I got the understanding of this, is that Visual Studio Code works with one folder at a time. Of course, it's so flexible. So of course it can work with more folders. It's called workspaces, and you can have more. I've tried that. I didn't like it. It's just give more confusion. One folder at a time is what is the default, and that's what's working. And I'll show you what I mean here by this function: right-click and reveal in File Explorer. I'll go into VS Code here, go up to my Explorer. Here I have my open folder, demo.vs code. If I right-click up one of the files in here, I can select this Reveal in File Explorer. So now it's opening a normal File Explorer. So you can see inside of this, there's one little confusing thing is that it's always writing the folder name here with capital letters. You have to get used to that, but you can see it's called demo.vs code. It's here, and all the subfolders just the same. All the files just the same. So this is just showing one folder. If you want to open another folder, you can do it in different ways. So if I show you one of the ways, you can go to File and say Open the folder, and you can click on another folder. and select folder, and you can see it switches here. So now I'm looking at another folder. The other folder is closed, disappears, and you get to work with the new folder. A really nice way when you want to work with switch fast between folders is recent, the Control R shortcut. Click on that, you'll have a list of all your recent folders. So very quickly to switch to my demo section with the different files I have here. I click Control R once again, and I can jump to one of the other folders. Very neat. So that's that's why I gave it its same part here in the agenda. Very easy. A nice thing for me to get started thinking about that. VS Code is all about folders and one folder at a time. Then a section here about the files. You see when I thought I should be finished with that. I have 3 minutes. That's not a lot for all this stuff. So I won't make it to tell you everything. I've told you something else instead, I guess. But a quick run through to find files. As I said before, there's 3 places you can find files. You can see it in the Explorer. You can see a list of files. If you start opening files, if I open 2 files here, then you'll see that you can see a list of the open files under Open Editors. And then if you start doing edits, you have another place where you can see a list of files, namely the change files. So let me put a dot in here and save that. And then in a minute, you can see, I won't tell you too much about Git, take a course. But you can see here that there's a blue one. It shows that there's one pending change. So if I click on that, now I get a list of all the files that has been changed. So also very easy when you know, but in the beginning, a bit difficult to all these different lists of files, but this is just the files that has been changed. And working with files, if I click on the file in here, watch what happens. I'm looking at 2 files now. I click on this one, and it opens another pane. And in here, it's showing the, you can see it's calling the working tree. That's something, a Git term. But it's showing the differences I've made to this file compared to the last time that I had committed it, that I had taken a snapshot into Git. So to show a little bit about arranging files, if I take hand of this pane up, this tab up here, I can just drag it. You can see the gray areas here. I can just grab it and say it has to fill this area. So now I can see both the actual file and see what I have changed since it was saved or committed last time. So if I make a few lines here and write the Sue base here, you can see it. It's immediately you can see the changes you have made since last backup on this side, while you can see the concrete file on this side. Yeah, for me, absolutely wonderful. For developers, they've used this for years in all the software branches. But if you want to do search, I'll tell you about that. You can do this. You can click on this command line. This is also a very important part of Visual Studio Code when you have to search for files. So if I want to find, let's see, I want to find the TMDL files. The way that you save when you save a Power BI file as a project file, you get its data separated from the code. And in this folder, you'll have all the visual code files, and in the semantic model, you'll have all the semantic code files. And in here, you have the TMDL files. TMDL has nothing to do with the report. It's about a way to structure the structure the semantic model code in a lot of small, readable files, instead of, as it is today, one big .bim file in JSON code that is difficult to read. So let's say I want to search for these TMDL files. If I click up here, I have different options. The first one is go to files. The next one is running commands. I'll show that in a minute. But go to a file. If I up here search for TMDL, then I have a list of all the TMDL files inside this one folder I have open. So it's not searching in Explorer in other folders. It's only searching in the one. But let's say I want to look at this this table. And I click here, you can see it's unfolding and finding the file and open it. So looking for files is what I've shown here. If you want to search for content in files, and this is something that really put me off in the beginning, because you have this big icon here from the beginning, search. You click on search, and I thought, well, now I can search for files, but this is not for files. This is searching for content. So let me see if I search for source. You can see it finds a lot of files here. So it finds JSON files, TMDL files, and shows where I can, all the places inside those files where I can find that word. So this is for content, and up here this is for files. I also have to show you something here with the editor. It's a really simple thing that put me off for a while. I have one file open now, a TMDL file. If I now click on another TMDL file, watch how this is written in italic. And if I click this down here, you see that it'll, it's maybe a bad example. Let's take this one. You can see that the name changes. So now I'm looking at this file and it just reuses this editor. But what if I wanted to show it next to instead? Well, then you have to double click. You can double click here. You can double click when you select the file. And when you do that, it changes font from italic to normal text. And that means that this editor will not be reused. So when I click on another file, it'll start a new tab. Again, that's italic. So you could double click it and it'll stay. You can also just double click the file you want to see and it'll open as a editor that will not be reused. Really simple, but really when I took so long before I learned to know that. So now we're looking a bit at working with long files. Let me show you a bit behind schedule, but I think you have to see this anyway. The syntax we have talked about, the formatting we have talked about, navigating. Let me go back to the Explorer, go into I'll jump to my demo folder. I have some Power Query files in here. I have a long one and a short one. So what I want to show you here, let me take the long one, is that you have breadcrumbs up here. You have the file name here, and then if I put my cursor down on this step, change type, you can see that the breadcrumbs up here. Sorry, clicking too much. Change type. Now you can see it says change type here. So Visual Studio Code identifies if there's some code it can recognize, and it can recognize the steps. So if you click on that step, you can jump to another step. So this is like seeing the steps inside the inside the Power Query, so you can jump. And there's another way you also can see that. It also was because difficult to understand, because it's always, when you're in Explorer, you always see this outline. On some files, there's no use for it because it does not recognize steps or what's the word for it? Symbols it's called. But when it recognizes symbols like these steps, you can see them in this outline. So this is also a way to navigate through your file. Not so clearly where you are entering, but let me say I take this custom one. You can see it here with the, also have to get used to that. You can see the line number is subtle highlighted with a white color here when you move around. It's also possible to show this side by side, as you saw before. You can just drag it over and put it in another position. A very nice thing is also that you can split it. So if I have this very long code, you can split the editor, so you just see the same code twice. So if you want to scroll down but keep a section open that you want to see at the same time, also very easy to do. So it's just two ways to view the same file at the same time, and you can just close it when you don't need it anymore. Yeah, we don't. The last part I'll leave for now to be able to show you the workflow demo. So to not mess that up, because I'm showing you a lot now, I have created a little video and I'll talk while it's running. So I'll just pause it here. So what I'm, sorry about that. So what I'm doing here is that I'm at the first part here, I'll show you the PBIP, the optimal flow. That is, here you have to have premium capacity and you have to enable preview features So this is a potential. This is what I'm practicing. You'll see the complete flow. And after that, I'll show the PBIT, the production ready, more simple flow that I'm trying to start up now with my colleagues. So I'll run them both. So the first here, I'm creating a new workspace. I'll call it IMDb, give it a description that we want to integrate with Azure DevOps repository. And then I'll go into Azure DevOps and create a new repository. So I hit new repository and give it the same name here, IMDb, PBIP, and click create. When you create a new repository, it always creates a README file with some standard text. It's a good practice to delete that one and write something more meaningful that I want to show the developer solution here. Now we have to clone it into VS Code, and we have to go back to the start point there to get the button show up here, clone. So now I can clone this into Visual Studio Code. I say yes to open Visual Studio Code, and now we have to select a local folder. It has to be, so choose a folder to clone into. So now we're choosing the folder where the files will be copied to. I have a folder called work, and we'll use that. And now the files, it's just folder and files getting copied down. And I open it, and you can see the folder is now open inside Visual Code. Now I have a simple Power BI file that I'm saving as a project file into this new folder. So I have to select the project file type. I'll call it IMDb 250 is because it's retrieving the 250 highest rated movies from the IMDb database website. And now I want to commit it. I go into Visual Studio Code and take this snapshot of all these files. You can see all these files is what's the result of saving as a project file. So now it's taking a snapshot of that and saving as a commit, it's called. Now I want to go to make a change in Power BI desktop. Here you can see the commit so far. I've added a README and updated it and saved it as a PBIP. But I want to make another change to the file and just make the color be blue. And I change the DAX. I'll just add some numbers and subtract them again. Save that DAX and then save the file. As something new in the newest Power BI desktop, you can see up in the top there that it is a project file that you're working with, so you can just click Save. And now I can go into VS Code and view these changes. So you can see that there's a number there on the bottom. And now I have to pause it here, because I went into the source control part of Visual Studio Code. Here was where you could see a list of files that has been changed from the open folder. And I have changed something in DAX. And now it's showing this DAX. That's a virtual DAX table I made to contain all the DAX. Inside that, I only have one measure, and that's the one that I have changed. So with red, you can see that it's deleting that line, and then instead adding that line where I have added the 50 and subtracted 50. And you can also talk a bit about the TMDL format here. The great thing with this is that there's almost no delimiters. It's very, very easy to read. And you can actually edit it in here also. Of course, you can't see the data, so the most of the time you'll, of course, do it elsewhere in Tabular Editor in Power BI Desktop or where you're working. But small changes, you will be able to work them here. And you're also able to copy it into here. Then you have to be careful about indentation, because the indentation is, if you just make an extra space somewhere, you'll not be able to open the Power BI file. But as you can see in the green part, there are 3 ticks just after movies equal sign. There's 3 ticks, and there's a start tick, 3 start ticks, and 3 ending ticks. And everything you copy inside those ticks, TMDL will ignore the indentation there. So you can edit some DAX elsewhere and just copy it in here between these start and end ticks, and it'll work. So I think that'll be useful. So I can see what I have changed. So isn't that wonderful? You have made a lot of change of your report, and now you're thinking, what has been changed since the last time? I changed 5 measures or something like that. You can see it here, like very easy. And same thing you can see here with the report, that this has been changed here, and you can see there's a line being deleted and a line inserted. And that was just because I ended the color of one character. So it's not very helpful yet. Microsoft says that they will also they will also do some improvement on how we can read the report as code. Right now, when I'm talking TMDL, it's only about the semantic model, but it'll come to the report part also. So, but moving on, I want to commit this, take a snapshot of this where I have made a change and just write what I did. I made a blue B and I changed some DAX, added 50 and subtracted 50. And now I would like to check out an old version before I made this. I want to go back and see that. So you can see in my list on the left side that I have the last commit there, but I want the other one. So I right click that one and select the checkout. And checkout means that it copies all the snapshot files out so I can work with them instead. So now if I go to Explore, it looks the same. You still have the Power BI file you can open, but now it's the old version that I have just checked out. So when you open it here, you'll see that the blue B and the DAX editing is gone. So it's easy like that to go back to old versions. And then there's a lot of stuff with how you work multiple developers and make branches and merge conflicts and all kinds that you have to do a course about that in Git. But it's as easy as this as return to an old version. So you can see here the blue B is gone. I'm back to the older version. Yeah. So last part is that I'd like to get now I have synced commit several times locally on machine. I have to go back to the main branch. I won't talk too much about that, but the main branch, that's what the online repository, Asia DevOps repository, it had a branch called main. So when I synchronize, it has to have that activated before I synchronize. So that's what I've done now. So if I go into Asia DevOps and refresh the homepage, you can see that all the files are now backed up local in the Asia DevOps repository. I like to have that synchronized into my workspace that I created from the start. And to get that integration to work, you have to enter some values in this page here. So that's why I just go back to Asia DevOps and show you where you get those values. You have an organization name, a project name, a repository name, and then this branch name called main. And that's what you have to use when you get it connected. So I'll just take a screenshot of that and put it on the top here so we can see what I'm doing. So I'll select I'm in the workspace. I'm selecting this organization in the repo. I'm selecting the project, selecting the repository and the branch. So now it has all the information to make this integration work. That's just a one-time setup. And now you can see the synchronization is running. It's starting automatically and retrieving content from the Git repository, online repository. And you can see now here we've got the semantic model still syncing. And the thing is that when you save a Power BI file as a project file, it'll separate data from code. And as default, it's only the code who gets into the workspace. So there's no data. So you have to refresh it. So that's why I go in here and update my credential and hit refresh. So now it'll get data into the model. It's to make this backups small and fast that it strips away the data. So here you can see we have the newest file with the blue B in the workspace. And now I'll do everything once again, just a bit faster. So let's make a small edit. I'll make the two first letters red. I'm in a project file, so I just click save. I'll go into Visual Studio Code. I can see there's some changes. I'll write what it is, red IM letters. I commit it. That's a local backup, a local snapshot, and then I synchronize it, and it pushes it up to the connected online repository. Could also be GitHub, free GitHub. Just remember, if you use GitHub, you can't synchronize it into the workspace. Yet, Microsoft says that they want to make that possible sometime in the future also. So what here, you can see the red one So when you get into the workspace after some changes has been put into the online repository, it'll show you here. Oh, there's some new things, and then you got the new. And then on top of all this, there's a further automatic thing you can do where you can make these by code, maybe PowerShell. I'm not really into or REST APIs or whatnot. You can make these even more automatically. But just here, I think this is quite awesome. But let me show you now the production ready way to do it, the most simple way where I just save a PBIT. So again, I'll create a new repository to store that. I'll give it almost the same name, IMDb, just PBIT. And remember, it's a good thing to just, you can edit it here, change the README files to something useful, because that'll be shown very clearly inside the repository here. And then we'll clone it down to VS Code. I have to click on this repo button to get the clone button. That's a bit annoying. But then we open it locally on VS Code. And here I have to select a local folder. That is, choose a folder to clone into some folder. And I'll select my work folder again. And now the copying is running. And it prompts me to open it inside VS Code. It closes the other folder and opens the new one. I go into my Power BI, and this time I'll save it as a template file, as a PBIT file in the new folder I just got created from the synchronization. I'll call this IMDb 250 again, like before. And I go into VS Code, and here I want to commit it. Take this snapshot. I can see here there's the U stands for untracked. It's not tracked. It's not inside the Git repository yet. Git repository is actually also just a file in the folder in the folder. It's just a hidden folder .git. Also very nice to get to know that. But let's make a change in the Power BI desktop. We have made a commit now. We have a backup. I actually didn't have to open it here, so I just delete the part. We have saved this, but now I'm developing further on the report. I make these letters yellow. And just hit it again. There's more clicking around here to get this Power BI file. So it'll just be so wonderful when we get the production, the project files into production, so we can use that all the time. But now I have saved it as a PBIT. And I would like to commit this, make a snapshot of this work. I go into Visual Studio Code. Before writing, hitting commit, you write a bit about what you have done. Yellow numbers, hit commit. And now again, if I want to go back to let me just synchronize it. So now I have made a local backup, and synchronize it means now I have made an online backup. It's just the PBIT file, so I can't look at it as code. I can't synchronize it to the workspace, but it is backed up, and it's both backed up locally and online. And it's possible to check out old versions, just like before. So if I go into to the graph, this was an extension showing me all the commits. Here you can see I don't want the yellow numbers. I want that one where I was saving as PBIT. I right click it and check it out. So now it replaces all the files in this folder with this snapshot. And you see every commit has a number, 9B here. It's also showing down in the left that it's this one I'm working on. I right click it and hit open. And then you'll see that I have checked out the old version, easy as that. I make a little tip there when I open a Power BI file. I make a parameter that I put into the end of every query, so that here when I started, not having to wait too long to retrieve data. The Power BI file is without data, so I can say when I started, it only has to retrieve a few lines. But here you can see the end result. An old version has been checked out before I made the yellow numbers. So that's the two flows. And the last flow I showed you here, that's we are starting in production. we are starting in production. And as I show on the right side here, I made some links to thorough introduction to Git courses to walk through by Rui Romano. So look for Rui Romano for the PBI project files, and look for Matthias Tierbach for the VMGL. And there's links in the sections for both these guys. They're the ones who are making it happen. So as promised, I'll show you. If you think that this is all too much coding and too much stuff, you just want some backup. You can do that like I've done in the last 10 years, using a highly underestimated program called OneNote. The program that everyone has, but nobody use. Nobody anyway don't know the uses of it. So let me show you here. I just write data, hit tabulate, write note. Now I've created a table. Not many know that. If I click Control Enter, I'm creating more rows in this table. If I hit the backspace, I'm deleting rows in this table. So here I'm writing a date, and also not many people knows that you can actually just copy files in here. So let me take my PBIT files. That's small files. Makes nothing to copy it in here. You can just copy a file in here and save it here. Typically, I'll color this table to make it more readable, like this. So now I made a copy. Let's write some text here, some explanation on what I've done, and then I maybe want to have a screenshot. I just take a print screen of this. So that was my new report. That was the state I had here. And here's a little trick many don't know in OneNote. You make 2 parentheses here, 2 parentheses here, and then you have a new page, and you have a link to that page, and you can paste in your print screen. So how about that? I make a new sorry. Just make a new copy. So let me say I made some editing. Have a new version here. I'll write another explanation here. I just hit like that, and I can paste in another screenshot for some documentation. So now I have my version control for this file. Explain what I have done, links to a screenshot. I can just copy this out and work further on it. Of course, this has nothing to do with real version control, where you can view reports as code and see what you have changed exactly. But it actually it does the job with taking copies. So that's really a light way to go. So to wrap up, recap what we have been doing. I've showed you my workflow. I've explained it and demoed it. So what I want, so it looks like we can achieve is to make integrations from VS Code into Power BI workspaces. Showed you something about VS Code, incredible good program, handling formatting, intelligence, syntax, search, comparing, editing, all sorts of things. And at the end, a little bit of no nonsense backup. So that's, I hope you're with me still. I haven't heard you so silently for a long time, Sue. But if you're there.
I was just going to say, I've never let you talk this long without interrupting you for the past 2 years.
I've been looking forward to this.
He says I'm a complete nightmare to work with, because he has to do it quick enough to keep me engaged, because otherwise I click all over the place trying it out, but slow enough that I get it. So I'm obviously working wonders on your ability to explain things, because that was brilliant. We do have a real giggle, don't we? But yeah, sure. So there's lots and lots of comments. And Henry, that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You know,
and you know me, Sue, I'm not capable of doing more than one thing at a time, so I haven't seen a single comment. That's me. So, but I leave that to you. And do you have any interesting thing that I have to try to answer?
He quite often tells me that I have to, one thing at a time.
My lights went out. I just have to turn on my lights. 2 seconds.
Yeah. So Yeah, questions for Henrik. That was really, really good. I will have to watch the recording as well. I do keep you in time, Christian. Christian said Sue has the talent to keep us in time. I keep them all in time. Amazing presentation. People said they will have to watch a couple of times, and I think you do to really think about what's happening and why. And I just want to pull up. We were talking about git ignore, and that using git ignore. Jake Duddy's been in the chat, and Christian Prifty as well, giving some support and comments and discussion about things. And
the git ignore. The git ignore files, that's a default. It's taken care of that the data is not synchronized.
Yeah.
So it's containing a reference to an analysis service backup file. So there you have all the data. So it's actually good you mention it because I have a little challenge here. So if anyone knows it, please reach out. And I'd also like to connect to people who kindred spirits about this. And the thing that challenged me is that a company policy we have here is that it's not allowed to have data on the local drives. And Git is working best when you save things on the local drive because it saves all these small files and it has to go fast. So if you save it on a network drive, it goes too slow. It's anyway the recommendation I hear for all the backend developers that you have to keep it on the C drive. And that's okay with the PBIT files because it has no data. But the project file, it has this .abf file who contains the data. It's ignored by Git, so it's not going into the Git repository, but it is stored as a project file, and that worries me security-wise. If anyone knows something about that, I'd like to hear. I've asked Microsoft, I asked Romano, and we're waiting for a reply there, so I haven't heard from him yet.
Okay. No comments yet. The ABF is a backup file with a BIM and data from Jake, which I'm guessing you know, but it's how do you, if you can't store the data on your local drive, it's what's the difference with yeah. So you're saying if the project file's got the data file in it and you can't save that onto your C drive and the Git's going to ignore it, but it's still there. So how
it's still on the C drive, yeah. So how do you make that easy for a report builder? You say to this report builder, yeah, just save it as a project file and you have backups and don't worry about the Git because it's ignoring the data. But the data is on the C drive and that's not allowed for our company policy. So how do I get around that?
No comments as yet, but I think if you've reached out to Rui, and then we can ask Matthias as well. Jake says throw it away.
Yeah, but you tell that to 100 project Power BI developers in the university when they have to learn all the stuff. You just also have to find that one hidden file and throw it away all the time.
Yeah, not going to like it.
No.
Christian Angel says local OneDrive looks like a local folder, but data is in the cloud. Jake said central dataset development and thin reports.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wrote on the slide where I talk very fast that so it's actually a thin report. No, that's rubbish. Thin reports. You can also back up the way that I'm showing, but it's not supported. The integration from the DevOps repository into the workspace, and that's because when you publish a thin report to a workspace, you get the same look and feel as an import. You can file. You can see a report and you can see a data set, but it's not a real data set. It's not at all a data set. They just call it a data set to give you the same look and feel. But it's just it's a pointer, setup of the gateway and all that to get you through down to the online on-premise stuff. So that there's something challenging there for them, but they're working on it. Rui Romano has said to me that it's true that it's not working now. He's also confirmed to me that there's mistakes in the documentation on the Microsoft Learn pages. On these pages, it states that if you have these files that are not supported in the synchronization will run anyhow. It will just ignore these parts that are not supported. That's actually not true. If you have a live connected report, and we have on hundreds of workspaces, we have these live connected reports, the synchronization will fail. So it's not ignored. And he has told me this correctly. They want to change the documentation. But then he said, but they're working on to making it able to synchronize. So that's the good news.
So the challenge is to get it working, so they don't have to change the documentation.
Sure, that would be the nice part. But
Yeah,
Microsoft did oversell it a bit there, because I was very happy. Oh, we can just move on, but we can't. Everything will break if we do it, because we have thin reports all over the workspace.
And Brian Julius, I just have to tell you this, Henrique. Brian Julius says he feels like a clueless noob.
All right.
Because it says the data field is always humbling. No matter how long you do something, there's always a topic that comes up that makes you feel like a clueless noob.
But it's so fascinating about this world that you can deep dive in some places, and yeah.
But I know
so
how. Yeah,
no
I know how much
everything.
you've been working on this, because well, I just do, because you've been studying and studying and studying to learn it yourself, and then to take that learning and to try and put it in simple language to hopefully stop others having the same issues that you had in trying to, it's just like you said, the double clicking on the tabs between italics and not italics. Once you know that, you just know it, and then you forget that you didn't know it. But if you don't know it, then it take you like, why does it do that?
Actually just revisited an introduction. It's on the Microsoft VS Code page. See here, you can see how you use VS Code from the beginning, and he just don't tell it. It's so obvious for him, and maybe for most developers. He just do it. He don't tell us.
And Christian said that's why we're here in the community, to learn from each other.
Sure,
and that's
Christian.
so true. That's so true. Any last questions before we call it quits? Jude Moore said, did anyone get a link for a Git intro book that's better than the online tutorials? Did you use a Git? Did you read a Git book?
I didn't find a book, but I made a link to a 5-hour course on Plural site. It's an Italian guy. He has the same accent as the Italian DAX guys. Yeah, it's not them, but really, really good. And he doesn't tell much about these hundreds of commands, as he says in the beginning. He talks about the fundamentals. And he also talks about this is just a folder. It's a hidden Git folder. You can open it. You can see it. It's just contain file. And when you get down to that and understand that fundamentals, it's much easier to understand all these commands, where a lot of them doing somewhat the same, but crucial differences anyway. So yeah,
I like the way you explain commit as just capturing a snapshot.
Yeah.
Jake Duddy said, any non-PBI extension that you use that are worth looking at? He said there are some good free drawing tools and stuff as well. You got a couple of minutes, and then it's yoga time.
Yeah.
Any non-PBI extensions that you found particularly useful? Open, you said.
Yeah, it was I showed the rainbow CSV. I'm quite happy with that. So if I sometimes get a bunch of CSVs, let me get 10 CSVs, then it's a really nice way, fast way to get an overview, not a statistical analysis like Brian would mention here. We'll do that with Python, but still, it's very easy to get a quick overview. So that's one.
Yeah. Jake said indent rainbow is good for JSON. Oh, that sounds good.
Oh, I also have it's actually from Brian Julius. He mentioned there's an extension that can give you a visual overview over a JSON file. That's also quite handy from time to time. Just just search for JSON in the extension.
Yeah, Brian's after a good Git book recommendation as well. Rainbow brackets helps. Yeah. Okay, well, Henrique, I shall go and let you have a WDN.
That's it. That's it.
A well-deserved nap.
Absolutely.
Henrik is a fan of well-deserved naps, and when he tells me that, I say, well, life is too short. So
and then I reply to Sue Bass that she can just listen to Winston Churchill, who told everybody that everyone who doesn't recognize the benefit of a good nap is a fool, because then if you do it right, you'll have 2 working days on one day. So.
You can see why he quite liked having an hour just to talk without being interrupted.
Right.
Oh, hang on, before we go, last thing I must say, because I forgot to say, next week, let me just share my screen. Next week, we have the amazing, going back, we have the amazing Melissa DeCourt. So Melissa, I hope I pronounced her name right, is going through pattern extraction in Power Query with us. And she is just absolutely brilliant. And then we have visual calculations with Jay, making DAX easier. 23rd, I've got to work. Then we've got psychology and report design. Then Shabnam Watson, who is brilliant, introduction to Lakehouse. And then customized JSON themes with Marjolaine. And then bad report, good report, great report with David. Tim, looking about Power BI with other applications. And then we've got Alex and Kenny on 3D BI, custom icon themes, work smart, not hard. Primavera. So we have got loads and loads and loads of sessions coming up. So it just remains to say a huge, huge thank you. I know lots of events, Oliver, and I've got more in the pipeline as well, including Jake, I think, who is going to be talking to us about branching and Git. So I haven't forgotten Jake. So I will speak to you all very soon. And Henrik, that was awesome. Awesome study buddy. Thank you very, very much. And judging by all of the comments in the chat, it was, everyone thoroughly enjoyed it. So well done. Huge congratulations. And I think we'll all be having to rewatch it. So I will save this, put it onto YouTube, and then we can watch it slow speed back again. So thank you. And I know how much work you've put in. So a huge thank you. All right. Take care all. Yoga time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.